This is World News Program coming to you live from Algiers, and we begin with the headlines. The Lebanese President Joseph Aoun ended a two-day official visit to Algeria, during which he discussed with President Tebboune the Palestinian issue and concerted efforts to overcome crises in the Arab region. Ex-occupation forces escalate their targeting of aid seekers in occupied Palestine. Hunger continues to claim more victims. Hamas says the occupation has turned food into a weapon of slow death. And the Sudanese army announces full control of the city of Jabra al-Sheikh in Kordofan. The Sovereignty Council says the war is nearing its end, while the African Union condemns the formation of a parallel government and calls for an immediate ceasefire. Hello and welcome back to your nightly news. First, the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, has reiterated his full support to the Palestinian cause and means to put an end to the savage Zionist aggression perpetrated against the defenseless Palestinian people, notably in the Gaza Strip. Speaking at a joint press statement with his Lebanese counterpart, Joseph Aoun, on an official visit to Algeria, President Tebboune emphasized that his talks with President Aoun covered developments in occupied Palestinian territories.
تحدثنا على مستجدات القضية الفلسطينية وما تستوجبه اليوم قبل الغد لوقف الإبادة وسياسة التجويع ضد أهلنا في غزة وإحباط خطط تهجير سكانها.
The Algerian president expressed the shared concern of Algeria and Lebanon over the evolving situation in Syria and the repeated aggressions it faces. He also emphasized the importance of joint Arab and international efforts to support Libya, Sudan, and Yemen in overcoming the crises they're experiencing.
وعربنا من جهة أخرى عن انشغالنا العميق للتطورات التي تشهدها سوريا في الفترة الأخيرة والاعتداءات على هذا البلد الشقيق ومحاولة التدخل في شؤونه. كما تطرقنا إلى الأوضاع السائدة في ليبيا والسودان واليمن، وأكدنا على أهمية تضافر الجهود العربية والدولية من أجل دعم ومرافقة هذه البلدان الشقيقة لتجاوز الأزمات المنهكة التي تعاني منها.
On Wednesday, President Joseph Aoun visited the Notre-Dame d'Afrique Cathedral in Algiers as part of his official visit to Algeria. He was accompanied by the Minister of State for Energy, Mines and Renewable Energies, Mohamed Arqab. The Lebanese president and his accompanying delegation received a briefing on the historical and religious significance of the site. President Aoun also visited the Great Mosque of Algiers, again accompanied by Minister Mohamed Arqab. He was received by the Dean of the mosque, Mohamed Mamoun al-Qasimi, and President Aoun listened to a detailed presentation on the mosque and praised its role as a beacon of Algeria's moderate religious reference. President Joseph Aoun concluded his official visit to Algeria on Wednesday. And to talk about the visit, we're joined by Manuel Pouchelet, geopolitical analyst from Paris. Mr. Pouchelet, how do you assess the discussions held around several topics, including security cooperation and the questions of mutual interest, notably the situation in Palestine and Lebanon?
Okay, concerning the Palestinian file, and of course the main issue in Lebanon, and it's a very important topic because we know that the movement of refugees has a deep impact on the home policy and of course the foreign policy. Today, we know that Lebanon is circled by Israel in the south and Syria at the east. And of course, it makes troubles inside the political orientation of the country. President Aoun took that into account in his home policy and of course his foreign policy, and he could provide a good help for all the neighboring countries or maybe other countries located in Africa facing the same problems. It's a very important discussion, and Lebanon has a strong expertise in this field, which is important to say tonight.
Understood. Mr. Pouchet, how is this visit going to reinforce the already existing ties and relations between Algeria and Lebanon?
Yes, today's visit of President Aoun in Algeria is very important because we saw the new agreement and, of course, a new future between these two countries. We know that already Air Algérie will start a new flight between Beirut and Algiers around August the 14th. But what is the main thing important to underline is that President Aoun said that he will need help to rebuild the destroyed villages around Bekaa Valley. And this is the main important topic to underline. Also, we know that Algeria and Lebanon will work on communication issues to develop a strong strategic partnership in this field. And of course, other topics can be done and also underlined, like medical assistance and of course, energy assistance and economy assistance to Lebanon. And this will be a bigger project around the Arab countries around the Mediterranean Sea. And this is maybe the new orientation taken by these two countries to strengthen ties and of course to develop new business.
Thank you, Mr. Pouchet, for your insights. And now moving on to news on occupied Palestinian territories. 73 Palestinians were martyred and others wounded by Israeli occupation fire targeting several areas across the Gaza Strip since dawn on Wednesday. According to medical sources, Israeli warplanes carried out airstrikes across different parts of the Strip, while Israeli forces opened fire on civilians waiting for aid. Among the martyrs, 61 were waiting for humanitarian assistance and many others were injured. The Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza reported 7 new deaths in the past 24 hours, including a child who succumbed to his injuries or who succumbed due to hunger as a result of Israel's starvation policy. The total number of deaths due to famine and malnutrition has now risen to 151, including 89 children, amid growing fears of widespread famine in the besieged enclave. The World Health Organization has called for the immediate entry of food and medicine into Gaza to halt rising famine-related deaths caused by the suffocating Israeli siege. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus stated on social media that famine, malnutrition, and disease are causing a surge in hunger-related fatalities, stressing the urgent need for large-scale humanitarian aid to prevent further deterioration. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency's UNRWA said that the hunger and thirst crisis in Gaza is worsening, while the international community watches in silence. In a statement on Wednesday, UNRWA highlighted that children in Gaza are standing in long lines for hours under the scorching sun just to access water and food. It described access to drinkable water as a daily challenge for Palestinians. The Islamic resistance movement Hamas warned that Gaza is facing a catastrophic famine caused by a full blockade that has lasted more than 5 months. In the statement, Hamas said that the occupation has turned food into a weapon of slow death and humanitarian aid into a tool for chaos and looting. And Algeria's UN representative Ahmad Ben Jama said strengthening the two-state solution starts with granting Palestine full UN membership. Speaking at a high-level UN conference, he called for recognition of Palestine, support for Palestinians on their land, rejection of displacement, protection of territories, criminalization of settlements, and an end to impunity.
The two-state solution must be fortified. This begins with granting the State of Palestine full membership in the United Nations. Algeria was the first and so far the only country making officially that call to the Security Council last January, a call supported by the overwhelmingly majority of the members of the Security Council. And we stand ready to do it again. Second, recognition must answer denial. Algeria was the first country to recognize the state of Palestine 37 years ago. And we now call upon all nations that have yet to do so. Catch up with history. Third, the Palestinians must be empowered on their lands. Displacement must be rejected. Land must be protected. Settlements must be criminalized. Impunity must end.
And Ben Jama stressed the importance of first securing an immediate and unconditional ceasefire in Gaza, along with guaranteeing the entry of humanitarian aid. Let's take a listen.
There must be a ceasefire in Gaza. Now, not temporary, not conditional. An immediate and conditional and permanent ceasefire. Aid must flow, not trickle. Children must eat, not starve. Co-chair, in conclusion, allow me to recall the words of President Abdelmajid Tebboune. Algeria is with Palestine, and we shall not waver. We shall not abandon the just cause of the Palestinian people until they obtain their full and undiminished rights.
The growing number of countries continue to announce their intention or their decision to recognize the state of Palestine. However, despite the significance of these recognitions, they coincide with an international failure or unwillingness to exert pressure on the Zionist entity to hold the ongoing genocide against the Gaza Strip. Osama Ayadi is the report.
His Majesty's government therefore intends to recognize the state of Palestine.
Many countries continue to announce their intention to recognize the state of Palestine. However, these promises of recognition, despite their importance, coincide with international disregard or inability to halt the Zionist genocidal crimes in Gaza.
We are used to hearing words, but hopefully this time things will be different and we see something on the ground, recognitions and standing with us to stop this extermination, this tragedy we are living every day, the massacres and the famine that has reached its extreme.
21 months of extermination, displacement and starvation on Gaza have found nothing from the international community but silence, or at best, impotence. The Palestinian suffering has found nothing but promises to recognize the Palestinian state.
It is framed as Britain showing its support for the Palestinian people's right of self-determination by recognizing statehood, but makes that conditional upon Israel's actions. It doesn't frame it as an inalienable right. It makes it effectively a bargaining chip.
The intention to recognize from countries that are remaining silent to the point of complicity regarding what is happening in Gaza has turned the promise, despite its importance to the cause, into a confusion of priorities and an escape from addressing the tragedy in Gaza and the West Bank.
We hope this recognition marks a real shift in how Western countries view the Palestinian cause. Enough! Palestinians have lived for more than 20 years under killing, destruction and occupation, while the world watches in silence, denying them even their most basic right, a state.
Without the halt to the Zionist death machine and the entry of aid, talking about the promise of recognition remains a mere diplomatic luxury dangled by the forces of the international community, which has not even dared to describe what is happening as famine or genocide.
Those against? The draft resolution has not been adopted.
This international community has maneuvered and evaded the Palestinian people for 77 years, during which the Palestinian people have not been granted justice for the right to return to their land, let alone establish an independent state on its soil.
The Sudanese army announced that it had regained full control of the city of Al-Jabra al-Sheikh in North Kordofan state, affirming that its commanders had reinforced defenses and established security points to secure the area and its surroundings. In a statement, the 6th Infantry Division and supporting forces confirmed that their units had repelled a new attack by the Rapid Support Forces on the city of Al-Fashir. The operation resulted in human losses among RSF fighters, including the death of Field Commander Habib Mohammed Isa Ahmed, who was identified in the statement as one of the leaders involved in massacres and forced displacement operations in southern Guinea and West Darfur. And the Sudanese Transitional Sovereignty Council stated that the war is nearing its end, adding that the next step would be a phase of development and revitalization of all key sectors in the country. Council member Nuwara Abu Muhammad Taher, during a working visit to Kassala State, stressed the importance of overcoming all obstacles and challenges facing key sectors such as health, education, and community development. She also emphasized the government's commitment to engage in youth in advancing this development.
The war is over and the next step is development, God willing. When we say development, we mean social development. And when we say social development, we mean schools, health, hospitals, and care for youth and people. In order for them to live a dignified life and achieve economic development, we must reconsider the resources of income for the poor and needy, as they depend on zakat. So why not invest in their wealth and provide them with investments and special care for the youth? We must also focus on political development and environmental conservation. All of this boils down to development, which, God willing, will be the theme of the next phase.
The African Union's Peace and Security Council strongly condemned the RSF-led Found in Sudan alliance for declaring a parallel government in Sudan, rejected any attempts to fragment the country. In a statement, the Council reaffirmed its commitment to Sudan's sovereignty and territorial integrity, urging AU member states and the international community not to recognize the so-called parallel government or provide it with any support. It called for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire, a return to negotiations, and the launch of a comprehensive national dialogue. And in Syria, the Interior Ministry stated that claims of a siege of Suwaida province by the Syrian government are pure lies and misinformation. According to the Syrian news agency, Interior Ministry spokesperson Noureddin al-Baba said Wednesday that the government has opened humanitarian corridors to deliver aid to civilians in the province in cooperation with humanitarian organizations. The United Nations announced its readiness to send a humanitarian aid convoy to Suwaida province in southern Syria after receiving the green light from the Syrian Foreign Ministry. Balan Ward, the World Food Programme's country director in Syria, said the convoy would be supported by several UN agencies, stressing that this would mark the beginning of broader access to the most vulnerable populations.
So essentially, we've pumped in almost 250 metric tons of wheat flour for the bakeries in Suwaida. But really, that's 4 or 5 days worth of supply. It's not enough. So we're continuing to try and get more wheat flour into Suwaida. Then RTEs, we've sent enough for 50,000 people. But again, the entire population needs support. And we have estimates that there were 500,000 people living in the governorate before. So we're estimating that literally 500,000 people would need support. Some have left, of course, but nonetheless, anybody who is impacted by the violence in Suwaida requires support.
U.S. President Donald Trump announced that the deadline he gave to Russia to end the war in Ukraine or face new sanctions would be 10 days, starting from Tuesday. Trump added while returning from the UK to Washington that after the 10-day deadline expires, the US would impose tariffs on Russia. However, he also pointed out that he was unsure about how much impact these tariffs would have on the Russian economy. The Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova said that Russia has learned how to exploit Western sanctions to its advantage, adding that these sanctions are harming the global economy.
We can see that the West simply can't detach itself from the sanctions narrative. It's like they're stuck in it. Apparently, they have run out of other options, exhausted them all. Meanwhile, we're responding and taking measures to counter all this, even turning it into our advantage where possible, using it for us.
The U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent warned China of steep tariffs if it continues purchasing Russian oil under U.S. secondary sanctions legislation. Bessent stated he has informed Chinese officials that Beijing could face additional duties if it keeps buying Russian oil targeted by new Western sanctions. His comments came 2 days after bilateral talks between the world's two largest economies in Stockholm. The powerful earthquake measuring nearly 9.0 on the Richter scale struck Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula in the Far East, according to the Russian Academy of Sciences Institute of Geophysics. The quake triggered tsunami waves that reached several countries thousands of kilometers across the Pacific Ocean. It was classified as the 6th most powerful earthquake in modern history. With this, ladies and gentlemen, we wrap up tonight's edition. Thank you for your kind attention. Have a great night.